So as Andrea said, I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Federal Group. We're a consulting firm here in DC, and we provide advocacy services to clients. And so we represent Mended Hearts and Mended Hearts. So I want to give you a little bit of my personal history, which is I am a single ventricle patient as well. So I had a Fontan in 1989, a pacemaker in 1989 as well, and then when I was 24, I had a revision of that initial Fontan. So in terms of being in the club you never want to be in, I too am a member. So you may recognize this picture from the last presentation of the pediatric devices. You can see, that's me, yeah. It's me from 1989. You can see I'm carrying around like a kiwi in my chest. That's how big pacemakers were and how small I was at that time. So, and this photo was actually in my doctor's office up until, it's actually still there. I know this because I called them and asked them to scan it and send it to me just last year. So this is the list of all the interventions I've had in my life. So like many heart patients, you're not just one and done. It's not just the surgeries. You're in and out for cardioversions and heart surgeries and pacemaker generator replacements, and it is a lifelong, ongoing condition. So my professional history is that I served as a member of Senator Durbin's health policy team. I helped assist the senator on health issues, and then I'm currently the Director of Government Affairs, and I represent Mended Hearts and Mended Hearts. So I'm here today to talk to you guys about being citizen advocates. And so I know that this can be daunting. So let's talk about what is an advocate. Advocates are just citizens who make their opinions and personal stories known. They help improve the lives of people living with cardiovascular disease in our case. The key to success is you in making government policies and making positive changes. And this can be kind of daunting. So first thing is, don't worry. Andrea and I and the whole Mended Hearts team is here to make this going to be a painless process for you. We're going to be providing you with fact sheets and issue briefs, and we're going to be making a step-by-step process. So right now what we're outlining here is our priorities. We are retooling this organization, which harnesses really great energy to provide peer-to-peer support, to now step out and be a voice for those patients. And so this is going to be an easy process for you, and we're going to provide you with all the tools that you need. So don't worry. The most important thing you need to do is that you need to know how to tell your story, and that you don't need to be a policy expert, because that can be daunting. You don't need to know the numbers and the figures and the facts and the history of legislation and how the Medicare payment reimbursement system works, because that's all high-level stuff that is quite honestly just crazy and confusing to begin with. So, but what isn't crazy and confusing is your story, and how you guys are able to reach patients and help them and advocate for them. So. There's two important ways that you can be an active participant in the Patient Advocacy Network, and it's going to be acting on action alerts. So this is going to be a tool that we're going to be using, I think, quite often. It'll be something that'll come in your inbox as an email, and it'll be customizable, pre-written letters that you can send directly to your elected officials. And then secondly, you can commit yourself to forming a relationship with your federally elected official. So let's talk about those federally elected officials now. So has anybody noticed that we have a presidential election year this year? Okay, good. I'm glad we're all on the same page there. So here's a little cartoon. I thought this was appropriate, and kind of bashes both sides. So I always enjoy ones that are. So you see there's a Bernie Sanders supporter that says free college, a Trump supporter that says free wall, and the Trump supporter says to the Bernie Sanders supporter, get real, kid. So everybody's got high ambitions and high plans for their presidential runs. And at the end of the day, one of these five individuals, and honestly probably three only have a likely chance at this point, if even that. So will be president of the United States. So let's talk about Congress. So this is, there's the House and the Senate, and I'm sure you guys are all aware. 435 members in the House, 2-year terms, but that's really kind kind of a misleading figure because they're not really 2-year terms when you have a 95% incumbency rate. So 95% of people who ran for Congress and were incumbents won. So you have a pretty solid institution that continues on with the same people year after year. The other thing to notice in the House of Representatives that majorities rule. When you're in the majority, you get to set the agenda, you get to set the rules, you get to limit debate, you get to limit amendments, and it's really kind of our way or the highway in whatever the majority is. In the Senate, you have 100 senators, 6-year terms. Now, I came from the Senate, so I have a high thought of the Senate. So I think there's a little bit more cordial rapport in the Senate. People tend to, the gentleman from Illinois, the gentlelady from Washington State. There just seems to be a little bit more cordial rapport. And the other thing to notice is that there's the power of the minority, which is one senator can hold up a bill, can hold up an amendment by himself through the filibuster process and through putting in holds. So you need to recognize that while you may not, when you're meeting with a member of the Senate, and they may be in the minority, they too have a lot of power. Just one member in the Senate holds a lot of power. But what you also need to know is that the staffers play a significant role. So you can see here, 435 members in the House, 100 members in the Senate, and there's about 13,000 staffers who support them. So they outnumber the members significantly. And if you can get the ear of an important staffer, that can be just as important as a member of Congress themselves. So, and we're not doing them today, but in the future, we're going to be expecting the Patient Advocacy Network to go to the Hill. And during those Hill visits, expect to meet with staffers, because members of Congress are often running from meeting to vote. Staffers often have more time to devote to the meeting, and in a lot of cases have more of that knowledge based on the policy and what's moving and kind of the history. Whereas the senator or member of Congress has got to be, abreast of all the issues and kind of only can go an inch deep, whereas those staffers specializing in those issues can go a little bit deeper. So let's understand members of Congress. They too are well-meaning people. There's a reason why there's 95% incumbency rate, but a 10% approval rate, right? Because people like their member of Congress, but they don't like other people's members of Congress. But they are well-meaning people. They say the highest importance of their job is that the feeling that they're performing an important public service, that they are invested in what they're doing, that they understand how their job contributes to society as a whole. So these are well-meaning people. Members also rated staying in touch with constituents as being a job aspect most crucial to their effectiveness, with a 95% of them rating it as very important. I'd like to meet the other 5% who say that staying in touch with constituents is not that important. But yeah, so these are people who want to stay in touch with their constituents and that they feel that they're performing a public service. And they're committing a lot of their time to it. Members of Congress report that they work 70 hours per week while they're in session. And then during the recess, when everybody goes on vacation, they're only working 59 hours a week. So these are people who contribute a lot of their time to performing this public service. They also do a lot of travel. 4 out of 5 members report spending more than 40 weekends a year in their districts. And so they're doing a lot of travel to be back with their constituents and staying in touch. But also some would say that this leads to, greater partisanship, because before, when they would move their families and themselves here to Washington, they would stick around for the weekend. They'd become invested in the community of the House of Representatives rather than the community back home. And so, this can also lead to partisanship. So this is a little bit of a double-edged sword between staying in touch with constituents and being a part of the Washington, D.C. community. So in Washington, this is how members of Congress report spending their time. You can see 35% is on legislative or policy work, and then constituent services work is about 17%. When they go home, this flips. They are working on constituent services about 32% of the time, and legislative policy work about 12% of the time. And so as a result, you can oftentimes get the ear of the member of Congress in district easier than when you come here to Washington. And I encourage you to set up meetings, to invite them to the hospitals, to show them the work that Mended Hearts is doing, to go to their office. So, and that's an easier trip for you, for a lot of you, I'm sure, to go to the district offices with members of Congress right there, and where they have more time to devote to constituent services. So that's a great opportunity right there, is to look at the way that members of Congress are spending their time. And lastly, I have a quote. Thomas Jefferson once said, "We in America do not have a government by the majority. We have a government by the majority who participate." So what we're asking you today is to participate, to be an active advocate and to participate in government, because after all, that is how we affect change. So thank you all, and have a great day.